Hello, and welcome back to the Softpreneur Podcast, where anti-establishment thought leaders and holistic wellness visionaries get clear on how to build a business like nobody else's business, with your hosts, Elisa Joachim and Dawn Petrin. Together, we co-create All Connected Agency, where we help the wellness industry's most disruptive thought leaders express their essence louder and prouder to create more profitability and possibility. And now it's your turn. So let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to the Softpreneur Podcast. We are so happy to have you here. Episode 5. Oh my gosh. Today we're going into something that affects us personally and that we hear about or witness in so many of our clients and our friends and ourselves. Just to underline that. And that is the idea that social media is bad, that we shouldn't be on it, that by posting or attempting to grow our businesses on it, we are simply feeding the beast. And recently, about a month ago, I was going out into my garden and all of a sudden I had this download that a lot of us were approaching social media with victim consciousness, and that is what we are going to talk about today. So, Elisa, can you please kick us off with a little definition of victim consciousness for any of our listeners who aren't already aware of the minutiae?
Yes, I would love to. So I would like to credit a lot of our understanding of victim consciousness to Kelly Brogan. We helped midwife doula her new book, The Reclaimed Woman, which if you are looking for sovereign self-reclamation and just to really make more space for yourself as a woman, it is highly beautiful initiatory journey. And a big part of it is unpacking victim consciousness, which really is hugely present in the fabric of our society as a whole. And victim consciousness is maybe most easily understood or seen if we look at Stephen J. Karpman's drama triangle, which is often used in drama therapy and the like. And it's a triangle, and at the three corners, there is the victim, the villain, and the rescuer. And generally, when we're in victim consciousness, we are in one of those roles and we will loop and stay stuck somewhere in that triangle until, as Kelly points out, we choose to exit the triangle. So just a very quick breakdown of those three roles. The victim is oh, why is this happening to me? And this isn't fair. And they're the perpetrated against, the poor, hapless victim who maybe wants a hand, the further expression could be wants a handout or feels that their weakness it can become using that as an advantage or just a perpetual state of being kind of in freeze. And then the villain is the bad guy, right? The one we want to point our finger at, the perpetrator, the villain of the story. And then the rescuer is the shining knight on the white horse who comes in to save the day. And that, interestingly, and Kelly really, it's very illuminating when we think about it, because a lot of light workers, healers, helpers, nurturers fall very easily into this role of the rescuer. So basically the idea is we can at any time be acting as the victim, the villain, and the rescuer. We can easily switch between them, just like unfortunately we see in a lot of global events and things, someone who's been quote victimized becomes a villain. And it's actually behind a lot of television and drama, and a lot of times where we're seeing I think there's been an obsession in the last 5-10 years with the true crime and trying to understand why psychopaths do the things they do, and empathy and all of that. So that's the breakdown. And I think that thinking about victim consciousness in relation to social media and in relation to how we live our lives becomes very empowering as we become aware of those dynamics and where we tend to live, and how we might choose to disentangle ourselves from the triangle altogether.
Yeah, I love it. And part of becoming sovereign is disentangling from the triangle, probably over and over and over again, really. And if you recognize yourself being in victim consciousness, don't become your own villain and then start blaming yourself or like making yourself the bad person. But it can be a really neat experience just to notice, like Elisa said, with light workers or healers or even just, traditional therapists. You need to have boundaries so you don't become the rescuer, you become the empowerer, right? And when we think about social media, I think it's really easy to villainize it. And I want to validate that in a lot of ways, social media, sucks and makes us feel shitty. So, first of all, obviously there's the big brother aspect. I have stopped even trying to hide from big brother when I'm old enough to remember time before smartphones. And, when they first came into play, I was like worried about it. I wouldn't get an Apple because I thought I'd have more control over like an Android phone. I don't think that's true. I think it's just, they're quieter about the way they're watching you. But we've come to a place where the technology is totally pervasive. And if you wanted to really like escape it, Elisa and I were speaking about this the other day, you really would have to go into the woods and, live off of like acorns. And even then there's probably like a 5G tower around anyway. So we're not saying that part of it is good. We also know like algorithms that you can't control suck. People work so hard to get in front of the people who need them. And then like, whoop, flip of a switch. And all of a sudden they're not being seen anymore. I think like fact checking, although if fact checking was like actual fact checking, maybe it would be okay, not the censorship, but the idea that someone's going to go into your claim and make sure it's true. But if you've ever actually like checked the reason why something is fact checked, it can be a fun experience, right? It often has nothing to do with the post itself. And then obviously, it's an attention suck as it's meant to be. It's like, it's been created to give us dopamine hits, and that's why we'll post more and then people like it and we're like, oh yeah, or they don't like it and we're like, oh my God, I should delete that. And then I think for myself, a lot around the sister wound, and like comparison-itis, where, I might see like my best friends and think like, oh wow, I don't have a butt like that. That's my main one. I'm like, oh man, maybe I should get my butt on social media more. So if you're listening and you think so, like send me a cheer, I'll try. But, or whatever, right? Someone else's success looks so good. And so many of us already know, that mostly people only share the good. So of course that comparison-itis is not showing truth. And then also I want to, Lisa, do you mind speaking about like the energetics of social media, for a moment as well?
Yeah, and this is actually a lot of why I was not on social for a long time. And I think maybe just as a little side note, why a lot of people might feel like victim-y around social media or some like resentment perhaps with it is this feeling of like, oh, I missed the boat. I should have been on here like X many years ago. And it's not fair because if I had been sharing what I know, like at the beginning of Instagram, just like these other people who have massive accounts, I could have had the success, but it's too late. So it's not worth it, et cetera, et cetera. And I was actually like in a circle of wellness and healing people in New York City who were like at the sort of beginning of Instagram blowing up and like becoming quite well. It's like the famous healer. And I think I created in my mind like a little bit of a villain around, well, how can you be a real healer if you're posting all your stuff and is that spiritual and all that stuff? And it's funny because of what I do now, but of course, like sort of becoming what we judge. But to speak to the energetics of social media, for a long time, I felt like I didn't want to be on there because I would almost feel, and if you're like a sensitive person, I would almost feel like mass anxiety or like so much that comparison-itis almost as like this like energy that's on there where I would be like scrolling and I could feel that the energy wasn't mine, but this almost like, please like me. like, need on there. And it's interesting because like as I've shifted or I feel like I have more strength in my own energy, I don't feel it as much, but I do think there are times when I just like when I don't want to see or be around or look at the apps and like I think that is for me it feels valid and fair. And I think a lot of this conversation or a lot of the ideas about finding sovereignty in this is like figuring out and sorting out your personal boundaries with it. But yeah, the energetic of Instagram and all these platforms, you know, there is a feeling of being spied on, giving your power away, almost like a leechy, like kind of like something like a draining of life force energy. And I think that it's something like societally we probably all want to look at. And I think in the real world, the sort of upsetting energetic is seeing how physical spaces are designed to be cute for Instagram. But like a cafe that's like on the side of a road, it's like kind of weird, but it's like would photograph well. And you're like, the digital experience is so much more valued right now over the physical or even just the experience of being in a city. And I think if you are like a millennial and we're like, you know, or like youth culture in the any time before like the last 15 or so years, maybe there was a different experience of like being out in the world and, you know, having a little flip phone that you could text people, but a different kind of freedom that I think a lot of us are longing for again and missing. So yes, there is a lot not to love about the way that a lot of our lives have become so digital and how it seems like social media is used for a lot of people to like validate their existence or that we need to be like famous.
Yes, 100%. My boyfriend's always like Ferda, like for the gram, like you're actually climbing that rock face in order to get a photo, like a selfie at the top, or, you know, your food is like perfectly plated, for the same reason, right? And just like, yeah, living life to share it, which might not necessarily be as bad of a thing, but actually not being present and living can definitely be problematic. And yeah, I think those of us who are lucky enough to have been born before the pervasiveness of all of this, we do remember a time where we were more present. And when we were with people, we were with them, you know, with our other friends who are all over the world. But having said all that, I do think there is some magic to social media. And of course, as softpreneurs, as business people, is amazing to live in a time where we can be connected to people all over the world. As an example, we just hired a copywriter in the agency and we're having trouble figuring out when to meet with her because she's on Sydney time, Elisa's on Eastern, and I'm on Pacific. So it's like going to be, you know, a little bit of a dance to do that, to meet. And we never would have met her without social media. And in this case, it was Slack. So I want to say something about TikTok that I realized when I first went on TikTok, because I like stayed off of it for a really long time. And then I went on it and I was like, oh my gosh, these are like actors and creators. And it has like democratized sharing your message in a creative and fun way. This makes me actually think of Madeline Moon. I just watched a video of hers this morning, and she's an actress, right? She started as an actress, and now she's like a tantric teacher and a relationship teacher, but she just crushes with these hilarious skits with herself. And it's not just her, the people with big platforms of like 80K and above who are able to do that. Funny people who may have been like in theater or just like the class clown or whatever can now share their art with the world, share their ideas with the world without needing to be like sponsored by, you know, some big Hollywood conglomerate that is probably part of the Illuminati. So I do think that there is something about having this medium to express ourselves and be artists and creators, whether or not it becomes money, we get to share. That is really beautiful. And just one of the ways where we could look at social media and see it as a beautiful thing rather than a Zuckerberg and the rest of the lizard people are watching us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anyone who's listening, if you can think of one positive connection you made or somebody whose work you became aware of because of social, I mean, really, even if you're only on it a tiny bit, it's probably had some real world implications. And I also think because of the rise of social, and it might be trite to say, but there's so much more, our idea of truth or like information getting out there, it's like way less, like you were saying, Dawn, it's like you don't just have to go to a casting agency and go down these traditional channels to be a performer, and the same thing with like how we're experiencing our world today. And we've found out a lot of information or shared information through social media, through small networks, and it's really opened up so much. And I'm kind of blown away by community that I have met and connected to because of it, even though I've spent the majority of my last 10 years being kind of a social media hater, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, I want to come back to this. And we had, when we planned this, we weren't speaking about it. And, we've all heard this term misinformation, right? And that those of us who don't really know shouldn't really be sharing. But the truth is, we know that the big news media corporations are also just propaganda arms of the government. They always have been. You can look into like Goebbels, or actually, hilariously, the BBC put out a documentary in the early 2000s called Century of the Self. And in that, you can really see how Hollywood and the news, they're not necessarily giving us true information either. Certainly, they're not giving us the full picture. So yes, I do believe we need to sift and be careful and, not be like, oh, well, this one person said it, so I know it's truth. But social media has given us access to researchers and journalists even who are on, just outside of the mainstream media complex. And it's almost like I would rather have all of the misinformation and all of the information in order to sift through it and find the truth than I would like to have I'm in Canada, so the CBC parroting out what the government wants me to think. So yes, I agree that social media can be a dangerous place in terms of you can't believe everything you hear. And it can also be this open forum, or at least it was whenever it started getting a little bit more, I guess, like pandemic-y, things started to have more control over it. And in Canada, actually, you can't even share news links anymore. It won't let you because of some government control. Having said that, it's still easier to share on there than it is via a tin can phone or, writing letters or even emails, right? You need to be on the right list in order to be getting news outside of that. So thank you for reminding me of that, Elisa, because I do think social media is a place where we have been able to unearth things that would have been more easily hidden, or they would have been declassified in 50 years. And then people have been I knew it, but it wouldn't matter earlier. And I also think it connects us with other people who are, our people. Yeah. I don't like the word soul family and I don't like the word tribe and maybe clan. That also has connotations I don't enjoy. So if someone's listening and has a word that feels good about describing people who are similar to you and on the same wavelength and page, I do think that social media has given us a chance to connect with those people. I like to think about it too, the trees have this like mycelium network in amongst the roots that helps them communicate with each other. And like if one needs this type of, so I'm reading The Secret Lives of Trees right now, but if one needs this type of mineral, then they'll actually like send it, which is crazy, right? So yes, there's information out there on social media that you probably couldn't find otherwise, or you wouldn't know which channels to go to find it without those people who are your soul family, for lack of another way of speaking about it, telling you about, some researcher who's really like dug deep into it. Yeah. And then like, can we talk about the fact that most of us wouldn't even have the chance to have an online business at all if there wasn't that connection point?
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's opened up a can of worms and it's opened up the world and community. And the reason that a lot of us can grow and be seen online is social. And, it's interesting because with our clients and students and people that we coach and support, we wouldn't tell anyone generally not to be on social. That's not advice that we give. Although sometimes people hear, oh, this means I don't need to be on social, from like telling people that they need a well-rounded ecosystem and that social media is just really, it's an important touch point, but it's not like a stand-in for the entire customer journey. And that said, like a lot of times at the top of somebody's funnel, social is so powerful. I mean, social media ads, like Dawn and I have worked on many, many quiz projects, and we've seen what that can do for somebody's business. And Dawn and I had this gift when we started working together of working on a project for somebody who actually talked about social media as like social media ads as using the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. And I think, there are people who really stand to profit and be seen and grow on there. And if you feel inwardly like you want to grow and be seen, and build a brand, like build a strong wellness brand, I think like doing so off of social media is a very like conscious choice. And doing it with social media will often create more ease. And then it's kind of about just delineating your boundaries. And that's where we get it out of victim consciousness, where you always have the power to make a choice. So what are you choosing? Are you choosing to be on social? Are you choosing not to be on social? And if you are choosing to build a business off of social media, great. Be strong in that choice. Get some education around how to do that. There are a lot of resources and people who teach about that. And there's a lot of tenets of building a business that are the same as like old school building a business that you can use. And I think everybody should use to build a sustainable, regenerative kind of business. And if you are like constantly on the fence, like this sort of will they, won't they love affair with social, and you want to be on there, but it's so embarrassing and it's so icky, and then you're in victim consciousness. So I know this space very well, and I spent months being on the fence about what to post, feeling confused, feeling overwhelmed, but also having this little voice inside of me that wanted to be on there because I knew ultimately that I was capping my visibility and capping my growth by not participating in the actually beautiful conversation that my peers and colleagues and people I absolutely adore are having in that space. And Dawn and I got this strong message, and Dawn, maybe you want to speak to it a little bit about like our refusing to be visible and being the like behind the scenes experts and geniuses in our behind other people's businesses. Was it got us here, but as they say in business, like what got you here won't get you there. And ultimately was capping our growth not to show up.
Yeah, I agree. And like this podcast is part of, our experiment in visibility. And I do want us to go after this into like some signs that you may be in victim mentality around social media. But I also want to say that the way you feel about social media So Elisa had said, make a choice, get off the fence or get on it or like hop over it. Right. And that is totally fair. If you're just on the fence, that's part of your journey and it's fine. But I actually think like if you want the fruits of visibility and you also are on a path of self-realization, which so many of us are on a spiritual path, social media can be a beautiful place to do your spiritual work and have all of your shit come up and then move through it, right? And you don't know, maybe your stuff comes up and you decide, actually 100% I'm not going to be on social media anymore. And then yay, like bravo, perfect. But also you might find that when you share a little bit, all of a sudden a little bit of growth comes. Right? Or when you show up and claim your authority, which is, I think, what Elisa was alluding to in us being sort of behind the scenes of numerous businesses and not sharing what we had learned and not sharing what we automatically channel as the people we are with the lives we've led and the studies that we've done and who knows, the lives we've led before this life. You might be hiding from your potential. You might be hiding from your success. You might be hiding from the responsibility that you will feel when you grow and you have to serve more people, get to serve more people. And yeah, I'm a copywriter, I'm a poet, and I like have the worst time trying to write an intro post or a bio because I'm uncomfortable claiming my magic. And I think for a lot of us, this is actually what it's about. We're uncomfortable claiming our magic, claiming our genius, and sharing it with the world. And that's where we get victim-y. And actually, all of the things we mentioned at the top are true, right? All of these villainous parts of social media are true. But by giving in to the villainy, becoming the victim, needing to be rescued out of it by like a course that'll teach you how to grow without it, or, like hiring someone else to do your social media, which I'm not saying you shouldn't do. But I think when we do this, we are actually doing a disservice to our spiritual path, to the humans who need us, and to our growth and our prosperity and our abundance, which as we grow in spirit and spirit led, we serve the world, right? This is the premise of this podcast. This is how we are doing business, trying to do business imperfectly, of course, but business as stewardship, spirit led. We are trying to do that. And, if we were to hide and not share it, maybe less people would see it as an option, right? So as you become expansive and step into your power and share on social if it feels right for you, or if you have that ping, or like you're like, I don't want to be seen, you give other people the chance to do the same. You become expanders for them, and you might just grow a business that supports your freedom and your lifestyle. So that's what I have to say about that. I have some ways that I think you can tell if you're showing up in victim consciousness, and Elisa probably does too. So I think one way that you can tell if you're showing up in victim consciousness is if you have a message, but you are afraid of that message getting stolen, so you never share it. If you don't think you're pretty enough, if you think I'm not good looking enough to be on social media, that is something beautiful for you to look at, because chances are you are very, very beautiful. Roald Dahl, like it's the inside that really beauty comes from. And also if you're like, it's hard in this sovereign space, because I agree again about the overlordiness of it. But if you are just angry all the time about social media and giving all of your energy to it, but not taking advantage of it, master's schools, master's house, you might be in victim consciousness. I don't know, Elisa, do you have some more examples?
Yeah. And on that last one, once again, we come back to choice. Like, okay, what platforms can you feel okay with? There are a lot now of places that creators and brilliant people of all like ideologies or philosophies hang out on. And is there one that resonates with you? And can you start there? And it's interesting because people that, are very outside of the box and outside of the system, often still, maybe they don't start on Instagram, but they're, as they develop an audience are on there. But some other signs might be like perfectionism. And like this was a big one for me. And I think that if you're a creator and you're a creative person and you're like, you actually just don't know what to post, I think there can be a lot of overwhelm. So that might be one of them too. Like, what is my body of work? I don't know. I don't know how to share it. I don't know how to slice it into pieces. And then also like sometimes that can become, especially if you're innovative, like outsourcing authority. Like, should I do this? Should I do, this formula? What's the, kind of a lot of like outsourcing how to instead of the willingness to try or the willingness to be messy. And then I had another one. It'll probably come back. But yeah, I think that if you find yourself stuck in a little bit of like a freeze or fight or flight, that's also just an indication that you might be somewhere on the victim triangle in relation to social. And if you're seriously villainizing social or people on there or hardcore judging other creators for being on there, you might be in the fight or the sort of villain area of the victim triangle. I'm not calling you a villain. I am just saying that if you are needing to make somebody else wrong in order to feel right in yourself, that is a key moment of being in the victim triangle.
Agreed. Amen to all of that. And I think this next thing I'm going to speak about it's like two sides of the coin, because on one hand, if you don't have any followers, if you don't have a body of work that anyone has seen, but you are brilliant, like our listeners are, and you have truth to share, social media can be a very easy, low-hanging fruit place to share and connect, especially if you can get over like, oh, only 200 people will see it. Like, oh my gosh, Alex Ramosi had a post about this. Oh, you only have 200 followers? What if you had 200 people in the room? He said 300. But if you were on stage in front of 300 people, imagine that, right? That would actually be so many people. And I think we're diminishing the humans who see your stories or see your posts or like it when you say like, oh, I only got 10 likes. Oh my gosh, 10 people saw that and liked it. That's amazing, right? So low-hanging fruit for thought leadership, for sharing. And then on the other side of the coin, and Elisa alluded to this earlier, social media is not the only place that you should be sharing your thoughts and your thought leadership. We are proponents of long-form, nuanced thought leadership. I say it over and over again. And if you want people to get on your bandwagon, it's going to take more than just like cute reels and sound bites anyway. So I'm not saying it's the only place, but if you have a new business or even a lot of the people who come to us are in-person practitioners who want to go online, and just putting themselves out there at least a little bit on social media can make a huge difference. So yes, that's what I have to say about that. Number one, it's not everything. Number two, it might be the easiest place to start putting yourself out there and growing your audience and connecting with like-minded, beautiful humans.
I love that so much. And, it's interesting if you're on social media and you find yourself too, just like a little add on here being like, well, I shouldn't sell anything on here. I shouldn't tell anyone what my offer is, etc. And we're going to dig into this a bit because this is kicking off our series on social media as a softpreneur. That's another place to investigate. And the cool thing about being on social is that over and over again, it gives you opportunities to kind of grow spiritually and in bravery and courage. And it is really an interesting invitation if you take it. And another thing on the numbers thing, because I totally agree. It is clearly social media appears to be a numbers game, but it is not. You might right now have, no matter the size of your following, you could have a tiny following and you could have 10 ideal clients following you. And those clients are a way more like, that's a deeper or more important follow than like, just random numbers or bots for the sake of it. And like I have seen, because I have at the time of this recording, a small following. And But I have people with like huge accounts following me because of the nature of our work. And I know that and I've seen ways wonderful that like my showing up has affected change in business, and it's also really, really cemented existing relationships. So social is like an amazing secondary tool too in your marketing. People might not find you on there. You might come on a podcast, be a great guest, and they'll follow up with you on social. So it's a wonderful, nurturing place, and it's really a realm to explore if you are getting super activated around it.
Ooh, I love it. If you're feeling activated around it, you're probably somewhere in the victim triangle, and it can be a beautiful way to move forward on your spiritual path, on your self-development path, and, just do the work that we all came here to do. So with that, I think that is probably the end of this podcast. We are indeed kicking off a series where we will be looking at social media and shadow work. We'll be looking at like what it's like to be a counterculture thought leader and say things that, get people upset, and how that might serve or not serve you in your life and on social media. And we're going to speak to a gal who had monumental growth in the last 5 months on social media, from 3,500 to almost 80,000 followers. And now she has brand deals and like a low ticket membership. And she did it all really by being herself and just sharing her thought leadership and her hilariousness. So stay tuned, because we have those coming. And in the meantime, DM us on social and tell us what you think about this, because I feel like this could be a really beautiful place for us all to be exploring. Maybe we can have our little like support group. I'm not going to be a rescuer, but I will be there to, share my own struggles with it. If anyone is into it, shoot us a DM. Maybe we'll start like a group chat, and it could be fun to explore this in a meta way as we do on social as well. Okay. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate you so much. And we really do want to know what you think about this whole social media victim consciousness idea.
Thank you. You're not a victim. You're extraordinarily powerful. Just a little reminder. And you can choose to exit the triangle at any moment.
Agreed. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Softpreneur podcast. If it resonated with your ethos and your soul, we would be so grateful to you if you leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast.
This helps us grow so much, and it also helps more visionary business owners find the show so they can make their dream life their real life. So many blessings and love.